Read all about it. Read all about it. Newsman Herald found under floorboards shot horror.
Indeed, read all about it. This edition of the Newsman Herald, sadly just its front and back pages, was recently discovered under floorboards. This edition was published on Tuesday, January 15th, 1974, and only cost 3p to buy. The Grand Old Herald, published every Tuesday, was dropped when the ill-fated Evening Herald was launched in 1980, before itself being put out of its misery in 1982. On the front page of this particular edition, there was a story about a fully loaded 6,000-gallon petrol tanker which had overturned in a ditch along the Ongar Road in Chelmsford Hatch late the previous Thursday, and for several hours created a potential bomb that could explode at any time, said the fire chief. The tanker came off the road near Chelmsford Hatch on the Ongar to Brentwood Road, lodging itself between trees. The cab was severely damaged, although the driver escaped with only cuts to his face and head. He was taken to St Margaret's Hospital in Epping. Firemen and police from Ongar, Brentwood and Harlow rushed to the scene of the accident and immediately diverted traffic through Navestock. Petrol was leaking from the top of the tanker, but was quickly stopped. However, the tanker could not be moved fully loaded. We feared that any attempt to move the tanker could result in an explosion, said the senior fire chief, particularly as the big aluminium shell of the tanker was likely to fracture. It was also feared that any attempt to unload the tanker with a conventional pump would result in an explosion, as the air was filled with dangerous fumes. As one fireman put it, the slightest spark would have sent this thing sky high. Thoughts of using a hand pump were also ruled out, as it would take too long. Eventually, a special pump was rushed down from Saffron Walden. The Essex Chronicle reporter Anne Fitzgerald has been highly commended in an award scheme celebrating mental health journalism. Anne just missed out on being crowned Mind's Journalist of the Year to Guardian's social affairs correspondent Mary O'Hara. Her article, Peace of Mind, was praised by judges as an inspired project drawing together key mental health issues combined with sensitive reporting. She makes the issues personal, accessible and informative. The aforementioned Anne Fitzgerald came up with a story about a couple that had to leave a tied house. The 13th of January was unlucky for Harold Jarvis and his family. It was the date of an eviction order to make them leave their tied house. Their hopes of having a roof over their heads were dashed yesterday when they were told that they could not have a council house. He left the job in March last year and since then has been trying to find another home. "I don't want the family to be split up," said Mr. Jarvis. "I've worked hard all my life to keep the family together." Mr. Jarvis and his family moved into the house, Coronation Villa, in the street Woodham Ferrers, in 1969 when he started work at Taylor and Woodland Limited's bakery. The family have been on the council housing list for over 3 years, but each time they go to the council, they are told that no houses are available. "We've waited patiently for a house. We're not asking for charity from the council," said Mr. Jarvis, who now works as an ice cream salesman. "It's about time something was done," said his wife Sheila. They have 2 children, Kim, 4, and a son, Andrew, 5. The couple are worried about the children's health will be affected by the damp in the house, and they also claim that the electricity is faulty and the bath taps give off electric shocks. "I'm not worried about myself, it's the kiddies," said Mr. Jarvis. "The council just don't seem to care," said Mr. Jarvis. He's tried to find a home for the family, but has found the rent far too high, or landlords unwilling to take a couple with children. A renowned reporter for the sports page was one Martin Rogers, formerly with Haters, sports agency in Fleet Street, World Soccer, Soccer Star, Speedway Star, Essex Chronicle Series, Lynn News and Advertiser. He was educated at the Kinegwith 6 Grammar School in Chelmsford in Essex. He was an author, journalist and sports journalist and lives in Monterey Keys from 2015 to the present. He was with the Gold Coast Bulletin for 19 years. He has also written and or edited more than 20 sporting books. And he had a bit of a reputation at the newspaper. In fact, he was known as the Prince of Prose. One of the matches which Martin Rogers would have covered was this one. Strangely enough, in the team there were 2 Collins. There was a Colin Hall and a Colin Grant. We know about Colin Thomas Hall. He was born on the 2nd of February 1948 in Wolverhampton in England. He played position as a right winger with a youth career at Nottingham Forest. His senior career started at Nottingham Forest from 1967 to 1970. His senior career was at Nottingham Forest from 1967 to 1970 with 36 appearances and 2 goals. Then he was with Bradford City from 1970 to 1972 with 66 appearances and 7 goals. He travelled to Bristol City from 1972 to 73, where he had 1 appearance and didn't score any goals. Then he was on loan to Hertford United in 1973, where he had 5 appearances but no goals. Bath City for unknown appearances and goals, 1978 to 1980. He was at Gloucester City, where he had 32 appearances and 3 goals, and Chelmsford City, where his number of appearances and goals is unknown. We do know he had a total number of appearances of 140, scored 12 goals, and his senior club appearances and goals counted for the domestic league only. Now that's the history of Colin Thomas Hall. We don't know the history of Colin Grant. If anybody knows anything about Colin Grant, then perhaps you'd like to get in touch. And now here's Martin Rogers at his best in an item called Now for the League. Can Chelmsford City win the Southern League? That's the burning question of the moment, one posed all the more sharply after Saturday's shocked exit from the FA Challenge Trophy. There's no doubt that everybody at New Little Street nursed dreams of a successful trophy campaign. Success in the National Non-League Cup competition would have brought added prestige and cash to Chelmsford City, and the prospect of playing at Wembley, something achieved by the likes of Telford, Hillingdon and Barnet in previous seasons, seemed all well within reach. However, it was not to be this year. Perhaps defeat at the hands of a more fancy side at a later stage of the competition may have been easier to swallow. Perhaps not. Truth is that City have a disappointingly poor record in the trophy since reaching the semi-final in its first season. But now the trophy, like the FA Cup, is history, and we're back to the reality of league football. And thus to the original question, can City win the Premier Division for the 3rd time in 6 years, or are the faults and failings which showed up at the Eerie on Saturday inherent in their makeup? To be realistic, recent records indicate that there is a new spirit, renewed life and conviction about the City squad. Their league form has been notable, 6 wins and 4 draws in the last 10 matches, and with 2 more home games in the next few days, that position can be improved still further. And yet City cannot afford too many displays like the one at Bedford. Ask manager Dave Bumstead. To suggest that he was disappointed after Saturday's tie would be a considerable understatement. I haven't seen him quite so put out since Scarborough last year. Maybe it is no coincidence that the City's poor performance up there was also in the Challenger Trophy, on the very occasion when a manager has every right to expect the fullest possible commitment from his players. He was let down, and so, in turn, were the faithful fans who hoped for and had the right to expect something better. After Scarborough, a handful of players were placed on the transfer list. While such dramatic and drastic action isn't envisaged this time, there is no doubt that a search must be on for a few newcomers with a greater appetite for the cut and thrust of what has to be encountered if a team is to win anything. One could point out that City were unlucky enough to have to field a side which contained several players whose fitness had been in doubt during the week. They had suffered some serious blows this season, with illness and injury taking out key players like last year's top scorer Roy Walcott and the ever-reliable Mick Lang. It doesn't alter the fact that the number of options open to City continues to diminish. They began the campaign with high hopes of challenging for the new championship, enjoying headline-catching FA Cup run and making a show in keeping with their status with the trophy. But now it's down to chasing Dartford and the rest in the bid to win the Southern League, plus of course the League Cup, which would be nice to win, but is relatively small beer in all conscience. Maybe one should not grieve over what's past. Chelmsford can still give everybody a run for their money in the league, and it all depends upon the mood. After Saturday, to be fair, tempers sparked and recrimination flowed, but let's keep things in perspective. A defeat was due to happen at some time. Call it bad timing if you like, but in the final analysis we may well all turn out to be mightily grateful that it didn't happen in the league. The City players can react in 2 ways to Saturday's defeat. They may lose belief and confidence in themselves and revert to some of their old ways of inconsistency and eccentric fallibility. On the other hand, they may pick themselves up, grit their teeth and resolve that nothing and nobody is going to stand in their way as they make an all-out concerted assault upon that championship title. And nothing less, I believe, will give them anything like the platform they and the club must have from which to launch the campaign for Football League 74. There used to be two large stores in Chelmsford High Street. One was called Bolingbroke's and the other one Wenley. After a very serious fire, which ran for about 3 days, the two firms got together and formed Bolingbroke and Wenley, and they worked together for many years. Their Christmas window displays were something to behold. Now here's a report from the Colchester Gazette, reported on February the 4th, 2000. It says, "Goodbye Bollies, we shall miss you." The deal to sell Bolingbroke and Wenley to a development company went through in mid-February 2000. Negotiations on the sale of the High Street store were completed, and the store is expected to close on April the 15th. Bosses are said to have been offered more than £12 million for the business, one of the oldest shops in the town. Property development company Chartwell Land, owned by retail giant Kingfisher, has bought the shop, and renovations will soon be underway for new stores.